Picture this. It's 1750 on the northern plains, and the wind is howling like something alive and angry. Not your typical spring breeze, mind you. We're talking about the kind of wind that makes seasoned warriors question their very existence, the kind that turns skilled hunters into fumbling children. And there stands Takes the Wind, a young Lakota warrior whose name would prove more prophetic than anyone could imagine. He's watching, with growing horror, as his arrow drifts sideways through the air like a drunk butterfly. His target? A wounded buffalo bull, massive as a small truck, bleeding and desperate just 50 paces away. In normal conditions, this would be like shooting fish in a barrel for someone of his skill. But these aren't normal conditions. The arrow misses by a full body length. Now, imagine the weight of that moment. Takes the Wind isn't just missing a target. He's watching winter starvation creep closer to his people with every failed shot. The children back in camp, their bellies already tight with hunger, are counting on him. The shame burns in his chest like swallowed fire, hotter than any winter frost he's ever endured. But here's where our story gets interesting, because Takes the Wind has something most warriors don't: a grandmother who remembers things. Soft Feather Woman has lived through more than 70 winters, and she's watched the old ways fade as younger hunters chase glory instead of wisdom. When she sees the pain in her grandson's eyes that evening, she makes a decision that will change everything. The feathers hold memory, she tells him by the flickering firelight. Every feather remembers every flight it ever made. But you warriors, you've forgotten how to listen. Think about that for a moment. In our modern world, we'd call this aerodynamics, fluid dynamics, the complex mathematics of airflow. But Soft Feather Woman is talking about something deeper, the accumulated wisdom locked inside organic structures that have been perfecting flight for millions of years. She sends Takes the Wind to the Black Hills for a vision quest. 4 days of fasting beneath the sacred peaks, watching the sky like his life depends on it. And maybe it does. He studies the hawks riding thermals, the turkey vultures spiraling down through gusting winds without a single wing beat. Hour after hour, he watches these masters of the air dance with forces that defeat human arrows. On the 4th dawn, Tuitanger, and this is where the story gets really wild, the thunder beings speak. Lightning splits the sky above him, and in that brilliant flash, Takes the Wind sees it. The spiral, not fighting the wind but becoming one with it, using the air's own power against itself. When he returns to camp, imagine the scene. Here's this young warrior, already labelled a failure, binding turkey feathers in patterns that make the old-timers shake their heads. He's calculating angles the way his grandmother taught him to read. Snowflake patterns, each unique, each following universal laws that most people never notice. The skeptics gather like vultures. They've chosen the windiest bluff above camp for his demonstration, the same place where impossible gusts have humbled every archer for generations. The wind up there doesn't just blow, it screams, it fights. It defeats arrows like they're children's toys. Takes the Wind knocks his first spiral-fletched arrow. The crowd falls silent, except for that howling wind. 50 paces away sits his target. But this isn't about 50 paces anymore. This is about proving that human innovation can match nature's own designs. That wisdom and observation can triumph over brute force. He draws, aims into that screaming gale, and releases. The arrow cuts through the wind like it's been waiting its whole existence for this moment. It flies true, straight, unwavering, and strikes the target at 150 paces. Not 50. 150. Have blown it into the next county. But the real test, the one that transforms skeptics into believers, comes weeks later. Picture this scene. A child collapses during another failed hunt, starvation finally claiming its victim. The other hunters have given up, defeated by gale-force winds that render their arrows useless. But Takes the Wind steps forward with his wind-cutting innovation. One arrow, one massive buffalo bull. Winds that would ground a modern aircraft. The arrow flies true, and the bull falls. The child lives. And in that moment, Takes the Wind doesn't just save a life. he births a revolution. Because word of what just happened is going to spread across the plains like wildfire. Every warrior, every hunter, every tribe is going to want to know, how did he make the wind his ally instead of his enemy? What Takes the Wind has discovered isn't just a better way to fletch arrows. He's unlocked a secret that's been hiding in plain sight since the first human drew a present. Bowstring, 2000 that working with natural forces beats fighting them every single time. But here's the thing that will keep you awake tonight, wondering, this is just the beginning. Because once word gets out about arrows that dance with the wind instead of fighting it, every tribe on the plains is going to want this technology, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get it. By 1751, Takes the Wind has become something he never expected to be, a teacher. And not just any teacher, but the founder of the first Wind Arrow Society. Picture this organization like a medieval guild crossed with a modern research laboratory, where the most skilled fletchers on the plains gather to perfect what might be the most sophisticated projectile technology in pre-industrial America. Among his students are 3 women who will revolutionize the craft in ways that make Takes the Wind's original breakthrough look like child's play. Bright Shell develops the brain oil treatment that makes sinew bindings waterproof and flexible in sub-zero temperatures. Morning Cloud discovers the precise mathematical ratios that optimize spiral angles for different wind speeds. And Whistling Bird, Alone Tells You Everything, creates arrows that actually sing different notes as they fly, allowing hunters to track their shots by sound alone. Think about what's happening here. In an era when most of the world still considers archery a simple point-and-shoot proposition, these plains innovators are developing technology that won't be matched by European science for another century. They're solving fluid dynamics problems that would challenge modern engineers, using nothing but observation, intuition, and materials they can gather with their own hands. The innovation spreads through 3 channels that reveal just how sophisticated plains communication networks really were. First, the trading gatherings at the Mandan villages. Picture these as the ancient equivalent of technology conferences, where hundreds of tribes converge to exchange not just goods but knowledge. When Takes the Wind demonstrates his wind arrows there in 1752, shooting accurately in conditions that ground every other archer's shots, the crowd doesn't just applaud, they offer horses, weapons, even daughters in marriage for the secret. Second channel, intertribal marriages. Young Lakota women trained in spiral fletching become the most sought-after brides on the plains, bringing technological dowries worth more than any herd of horses. These women don't just carry the knowledge, they become teachers, establishing arrow-making centers in their new tribes, and creating a network of innovation that spans thousands of square miles. Third channel, the warrior societies themselves. Picture young men trading techniques for Spanish steel and captured horses, each exchange spreading the spiral technology further across the continent. It's like watching the internet develop in real time, except instead of fiber optic cables, you have trade routes and marriage alliances carrying information at the speed of horseback. The military implications become crystal clear at the Battle of Windy Ridge in 1755. 50 Lakota warriors face 200 Crow fighters in conditions that should have heavily favored the larger force. But here's the thing about wind arrows. They don't just fly straight in bad weather, they give their users a decisive advantage when everyone else is struggling. The battle unfolds like something from a fever dream. Crow arrows drift harmlessly past their targets while Lakota shafts punch through the screaming wind with surgical precision. It's not just victory, it's technological dominance so complete that it reshapes the balance of power across the northern plains. Word of this battle spreads faster than wildfire, and suddenly every chief from the Missouri River to the Rocky Mountains wants wind arrow technology. But here's where human nature kicks in with a vengeance. Desperate enemies start attempting espionage operations that would make modern intelligence agencies proud. The Pawnee warrior Black Fox infiltrates a teaching lodge disguised as a trader, spending weeks observing spiral fletching techniques. He memorizes every visible detail, sketches, patterns in secret, even steals sample arrows. But here's the beautiful irony. The spiral's mathematics prove impossible to steal through observation alone. It's like trying to reverse engineer a computer processor by looking at it through a magnifying glass. The knowledge isn't just in the physical technique, it's in the accumulated understanding of wind patterns, feather properties, and binding materials that takes years to develop. Black Fox returns to his people with useless fragments of knowledge, unable to recreate what he's witnessed. The technology creates entirely new economies. Specialized arrow-making centers emerge along Missouri River like Silicon Valley startups, where master crafters charge 2 horses for a dozen perfect wind arrows. That's not just expensive, that's luxury goods pricing in a subsistence economy. These arrows become status symbols, military necessities, and trade commodities, all rolled into one. Children grow up playing Wind Warrior with miniature bows, learning aerodynamics through games their parents design. Think about that for a moment. An entire generation absorbing complex physics principles through play, developing intuitive understanding of concepts that European universities won't formalize for decades. But the most dramatic demonstration comes during the Night of Burning Arrows in 1760. Picture this scene. Allied tribes gather on a hilltop during a thunderstorm. 500 warriors armed with spiral-fletched arrows wrapped in pitch-soaked cloth. Lightning illuminates the sky as they simultaneously release their flaming shafts through howling winds and driving rain. The arrows fly true, creating a display visible for 20 miles, 500 points of fire cutting through the storm like fallen stars. It's part military demonstration, part religious ceremony, and part technological showcase. The last holdout bands, watching this impossible feat from distant camps, finally understand what they're up against. This isn't just about better arrows anymore. It's about a fundamental shift in how human technology can work with natural forces, instead of against them. The spiral fletching has become a symbol of indigenous innovation that proves plains cultures aren't primitive. They're sophisticated in ways that European science is only beginning to understand. But as word of these wind-dancing arrows spreads even further across the continent, new challenges emerge. Because when you possess technology this valuable, everyone wants it, and not everyone is willing to trade fairly for it. From 1780 to 1820, we witness something extraordinary, the absolute perfection of indigenous technology that rivals anything being developed in European workshops. Takes the wind's grandson, Eagle in Storm, inherits not just a name, but a legacy of innovation that he'll push to heights his grandfather never imagined. Picture the plains during this era. Spanish horses have transformed warfare completely, turning foot soldiers into mounted cavalry that can cover hundreds of miles in weeks. But here's the thing about shooting arrows from horseback. It creates wind problems that make standing archery look simple. A galloping horse doesn't just move through air. It creates complex turbulence patterns, downdrafts, crosswinds that change by the second. Traditional arrows become nearly useless under these conditions. But spiral fletching? It adapts. Eagle in Storm discovers that the same principles that cut through natural wind also compensate for the chaotic air currents created by mounted warfare. His mounted archers can maintain accuracy at full gallop, turning the entire plains into their battlefield. Imagine the psychological impact on enemies who watch arrows flying true from riders moving at 30 miles per hour through conditions that should make accurate shooting impossible. The sacred arrow bundles developed during this period, and these aren't just storage containers, they're power objects that rival the most sacred pipes and medicine bundles. Chiefs guard these collections of perfect spiral-fletched arrows like national treasures, because that's exactly what they are. Each bundle contains examples blessed in ceremony, arrows that embody the perfect marriage of technology and spirituality. The women's arrow-making guilds evolve into something resembling modern research institutions. They develop specialized tools that would impress any craftsperson, bone measures for precise spiral angles, calibrated to ensure consistency across thousands of arrows, obsidian scrapers for feather preparation, creating edges sharper than modern surgical steel, sacred paints that mark arrows for different wind conditions, red for Chinook winds, blue for thunderstorm gusts, yellow for the steady prairie breezes that blow across summer grasslands. Think about the sophistication here. These women are essentially running quality control laboratories, ensuring that every arrow meets specifications that they've developed through decades of experimentation. They're not just crafters, they're engineers working at the cutting edge of materials science. The Thousand-Arrow Storm demonstration of 1804 stops Lewis and Clark in their tracks. Picture this moment. The expedition is paddling up the Missouri River when they witness something that defies everything they understand about archery. 1,000 warriors stand on the bluffs above, and at a single signal, they simultaneously release spiral-fletched arrows through gusting river winds. The arrows maintain formation like a flock of birds, flying in perfect synchronization despite wind conditions that should scatter them like leaves. Meriwether Lewis writes in his journal that it's the most remarkable display of martial skill he's ever witnessed. William Clark sketches the scene frantically, trying to capture something his Eastern colleagues will never believe. But the real breakthrough comes from Yellow Medicine Woman, a master fletcher whose innovations push the technology into realm of the seemingly impossible. She discovers that combining eagle, hawk, and turkey feathers in specific patterns creates arrows that actually gain stability in crosswinds. Not just maintain accuracy, gain stability. The arrows use wind energy to correct their own flight paths. Let that sink in for a moment. Yellow Medicine Woman has essentially invented a self-correcting projectile using nothing but bird feathers and mathematical intuition. She's solving aerodynamics problems that won't be formally understood by European science until the development of aviation. The Great Peace of 1819 represents the ultimate triumph of shared innovation over military secrecy. Former enemies gather at Bear Butte, the sacred mountain that pierces the sky like a natural cathedral. Chiefs who've been killing each other for generations sit in circle and formally share all wind arrow variations. Why? Because they've realized something profound. Mutual knowledge prevents any single tribe from gaining overwhelming advantage. If everyone has access to the same technology, then success depends on skill and wisdom rather than technological superiority. It's arms control achieved through open-source innovation, decades before anyone coined those terms. Trading posts report that wind arrows command 10 times the price of traditional arrows. 10 times. That's not just market premium, that's revolutionary technology pricing. Wealthy arrow-making families emerge, passing secrets through matrilineal lines that ensure knowledge stays within trusted networks. These aren't just crafters anymore. They're technology dynasties, controlling innovations worth fortunes in horses and trade goods. The spiritual dimension deepens in ways that reveal how indigenous science integrates practical knowledge with sacred understanding. Arrow-making ceremonies incorporate dreams where fletchers commune with bird nations, learning subtle variations that match specific wind patterns. The spiral for Chinook winds differs from patterns used in summer thunderstorms, which differ again from designs optimized for winter gales. Think about this for a moment. These fletchers are essentially conducting systematic research through spiritual practice, receiving technical specifications through dreams and visions that they then test under real-world conditions. It's experimental science wrapped in ceremonial practice, proving that indigenous knowledge systems can be simultaneously sacred and empirical. Master. Fletchers develop specializations that would make modern engineers jealous. Some focus on high-altitude winds encountered in mountain hunting. Others, perfect arrows for river-valley hunting, where air currents swirl unpredictably. Still others create specialty arrows for buffalo hunting, where massive animals require both accuracy and penetrating power. By 1820, the wind arrow has achieved something remarkable, technological maturity that represents the absolute pinnacle of pre-industrial projectile science. These arrows fly straighter, farther, and more accurately than anything being produced in European workshops. They've transformed plains warfare, hunting, and culture in ways that extend far beyond simple tool improvement. But storm clouds are gathering on the horizon. Firearms are becoming more common, more reliable, more deadly. The golden age of the spiral hunters is about to face its greatest challenge, not from competing arrow technology, but from an entirely different approach to warfare that will threaten the very foundations of plains culture. After 1820, the world changes with devastating speed. Firearms gradually eclipse bows in warfare. But here's the thing about revolutionary technology, exemple, It doesn't just disappear overnight. Wind arrows remain essential for buffalo hunting until the herds themselves vanish, because even the best muskets of the era can't match the silent accuracy needed for stalking massive game across open prairie. Picture a Lakota hunter in 1850, armed with both rifle and spiral-fletched arrows. The rifle for warfare, the arrows for survival. The gun announces your presence to every animal within miles. The arrow whispers through wind and brings down buffalo without alerting the herd. It's the difference between making noise and making meat. But then comes the catastrophe that nearly destroys everything. The 1870s bring cultural annihilation, disguised as civilization. Reservation agents, armed with government authority and absolute ignorance, confiscate weapons and ceremonial items like they're collecting trash. To these officials, a sacred arrow bundle looks like a pile of sticks and feathers. They have no idea they're destroying technology that represents centuries of accumulated innovation. But here's where the story gets remarkable, because indigenous people have survived cultural destruction before. Grandmother Fletchers become guerrilla preservationists, hiding crucial tools and knowledge with the same determination their ancestors used to survive winter blizzards. Soft-singing woman buries 30 sacred arrow forms beneath her cabin floor at Pine Ridge, wrapped in oiled deerskin and sealed in metal containers scavenged from traders. She marks the hiding spot with beadwork patterns that look decorative to casual observers but contain precise geographical information for future generations. It's like creating a technological time capsule, complete with recovery instructions hidden in plain sight. James Crowfeather takes a different approach. He memorizes the 17 essential spiral patterns through winter nights when teaching them aloud risks punishment. Picture this man, sitting in the dark, running his fingers over arrow forms again and again until muscle memory preserves what his voice cannot speak. He's becoming a living library, storing aerodynamic knowledge in human consciousness where no government agent can confiscate it. The ghost dance movement of 1890 incorporates wind arrows as symbols of indigenous power that no bullets can defeat. It's partly spiritual metaphor, partly technological pride. These dancers know something their oppressors don't, that indigenous innovation created projectiles superior to anything in the white man's arsenal. The arrows become symbols of resistance, proof that native peoples aren't primitive survivors, but sophisticated innovators. Underground preservation. Networks operate through the early 20th century like technological resistance movements. Women hide Fletcher's tools inside cradleboards, disguising arrow-making equipment as baby care items. Men encode spiral mathematics in beadwork patterns, creating geometric designs that look decorative but actually preserve precise technical specifications. Elders teach in secret using store-bought materials, when traditional feathers become illegal to possess under federal wildlife laws. Think about the irony here. The same government that nearly exterminated indigenous people is now protecting the birds, whose feathers made their technology possible. Eagle feathers become federal contraband, forcing master Fletchers to develop spiral techniques using chicken and turkey feathers purchased from white farmers. The knowledge survives, hidden but intact, through decades of suppression. Grandmothers teach granddaughters while pretending to discuss quilting patterns. Grandfathers show grandsons while supposedly demonstrating woodworking techniques. The spiral lives on in whispered instructions and careful demonstrations conducted far from prying eyes. Then comes the 1970s cultural revival, and everything changes again. Sarah Windrider takes the wind's great-great-granddaughter, discovers hidden arrow bundles while cleaning out her grandmother's cabin. Picture this moment. She's expecting old blankets and forgotten keepsakes, and instead finds perfectly preserved examples of technology that predates the Industrial Revolution. The arrows look ancient but feel sophisticated, their spiral patterns catching light in ways that suggest complex mathematics. Sarah does something unprecedented. She convinces Stanford University physicists to test her ancestral arrows in wind tunnels designed for aircraft research. The scientists approach this project with polite skepticism, expecting to humor a native woman with romantic notions about primitive technology. The results astound everyone. The The spiral fletching reduces wind drift by 68% compared to straight fletching. 68%. But that's not the remarkable part. Some designs actually use crosswinds to increase velocity, converting air resistance into propulsive force. The arrows are performing feats that challenge modern understanding of aerodynamics. Dr. Michael Peterson, the lead researcher, publishes findings that read like science fiction. These projectiles demonstrate sophisticated understanding of fluid dynamics that predates European aeronautical science by 3 centuries. The mathematical principles embedded in their construction suggest indigenous knowledge systems capable of solving complex engineering problems through empirical observation and systematic experimentation. Modern Archer Mary, Crow Dog, wielding ancestral spiral-fletched arrows, wins 7 consecutive world championships between 2016 and 2023. She's not just defeating competitors, he's demolishing them, using arrows made with centuries-old techniques against opponents armed with space-age materials. Carbon fiber shafts and computer-designed fletching can't match the wind-dancing spirals her grandmother taught her to bind. Today, Marcus Strongbow's YouTube channel teaches 500,000 subscribers the ancient techniques. His videos go viral, not because they're entertaining, but because they were. Modern archers discover that indigenous innovation outperforms contemporary technology, and suddenly everyone wants to learn the spiral's secrets. Aerospace engineers partner with traditional fletchers, exploring applications in drone technology and missile guidance systems. It turns out that principles developed for making arrows dance with prairie winds also improve the stability of unmanned aircraft flying through turbulent air. The spiral that helped plains hunters feed their families now guides military drones through Middle Eastern sandstorms. The spiral lives on, not as museum curiosity, but as living proof that indigenous innovation represents sophisticated science wrapped in sacred understanding. Takes the wind's vision, Quest Breakthrough has evolved into modern applications that span from traditional archery to cutting-edge aerospace engineering. But here's the real lesson of this story. When European explorers first encountered plains peoples, they saw primitive hunters armed with simple weapons. They couldn't recognize the sophisticated technology staring them in the face because it didn't look like European innovation. The spiral fletching seemed like decoration rather than engineering, ceremonial rather than scientific. We make the same mistakes today, dismissing indigenous knowledge as folklore while struggling to solve problems that traditional peoples mastered centuries ago. The wind arrow's legacy reminds us that innovation doesn't always announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it whispers through, the wind, waiting for those wise enough to listen. Takes the Wind learned to hear that whisper in the Black Hills over 2 centuries ago. His descendants are still teaching the world how to dance with forces that seem impossible to control. The spiral endures, proving that the best technology doesn't fight nature, Pomus. It partners with it, creating solutions as elegant as they are effective. The wind still blows across the plains, and somewhere in that endless sky, the spiral's secret continues to fly true.